and welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones, and we are so glad to have you here. The conflict between Israel and Palestine has escalated into war, with Hamas attacking Israel and Israel launching a major military operation in Gaza. The situation has prompted strong reactions from around the world, with U.S. and European leaders denouncing the violence. New Jersey has close ties to Israel, with bilateral trade between the two valued at $1.27 billion in 2019. Israel has continued to be a notable source of job creation and foreign direct investment into New Jersey. Alan Joel Steinberg is a political columnist for Insider NJ and a former regional administrator for the EPA during the second term of President George W. Bush. He joins me now with his insights into the current situation in Israel and its implications for New Jersey. Alan, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Delighted to be here with you always, Laura.
Now, Ellen, the Israeli UN ambassador said, this is our 9/11, and you wrote a column, and you were actually in Israel on 9/11. So what is this like to watch from afar?
Very painful. I am an American citizen, but I'm also very much at home in Israel. A number of my relatives who were not murdered in the Holocaust found safety and security in Israel over the last 75 years. I have many friends there. When I go to Israel, I feel very at home, the homeland of the Jewish people. My family's been very involved in Israel. My son was in Israel during the last Intifada. He was a student at Hebrew University, and he stayed the whole time. And I was very, very admiring of him for doing that. Very proud of him. And he and my granddaughter, my daughter-in-law, had a trip to Israel right before my granddaughter was born. And I hope to see my granddaughter go there also. But this is a very painful time. And people who are there, I know, have anxiety about matters, but they go on in their own confident and very brave way.
Can you talk a little bit about the article that you've just written for Insider NJ and just your reflections on what is happening there right now?
What is happening right now is that Israel got caught by surprise, and that is the most frightening thing to me, because Israel has always had the best security of any country in the world. Way back when Richard Nixon was president and he was talking about his involvement in the Yom Kippur War, he said that that was a surprise then, because Israel always had the best intelligence. And this had to be the greatest intelligence failure in the history of the country. And plus that, Hamas is an evil gang. It is a gang without any humanity, and it is terrifying to see people kidnapped off the roads, 260 people killed at a music festival. These things are not supposed to happen in Israel. And I think that what concerns me about the Biden administration, and I've been a supporter of Joe Biden, I know he is a friend of Israel, but I'm very concerned about Secretary of State Blinken not realizing that Iran is behind all of this. The evidence is overwhelming. He seems to come from the Obama, John Kerry school of appeasement, that somehow we can appease Iran. Iran is a mortal foe of Israel. It is a mortal foe of the United States of America, and we have to face up to that. And I would not be surprised if at some point Israel did not launch a preemptive strike against Iran. They may have to for their own security.
Yeah, and you've actually written about that. You've said that you academically understand Palestinian Arab nationalism. This is not that. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, it is not that. You know, back in 1947, when the UN partitioned Palestine, it set up a mechanism for a Jewish state and the Arab state. And the Jews accepted that. The Arabs did not. The Palestinian Arabs went to war against the new Jewish state, and they lost. And as a result of that loss, they had refugees. They did not set up their own state. The Jordanians under King Abdullah came in and set up a state governing the Palestinian Arabs as well. The Egyptians conquered the Gaza Strip. So they were governed by Arabs, but not by themselves. But they never revolted against their fellow Arabs. They only made war against the Jews, and the Jews were the only ones that recognized the right at that time of a Palestinian state. All the years between the establishment of a Jewish state in 1947 and 1948 and the Six-Day War of 1967. During all those years, the Palestinians never tried to establish their own state. They just went to war against the Jewish state, and they tried to get the Arab states to go to war on their behalf, which happened in 1967. And Israel won the war, and it was only then that the quote unquote occupation began. Israel never had any desire to occupy the West Bank, occupy the Gaza Strip, but they won these lands in a war for their own defense. And that's something that the public has to understand. They still could make peace with the Palestinians. The Oslo process was set up. Unfortunately, none of the Palestinian major entities, including the Palestinian Authority or Hamas, has recognized the Jews to have the right to live in a Jewish state. And until this is resolved, the conflict is not going to be resolved. And as long as the Hamas clings to an ideology of eliminationist anti-Semitism, eliminating the Jewish state, in their charter it says no Jews should remain in quote unquote Palestine except for those who arrived before 1918 or families before 1918. That is not conducive to peace. So I am very pessimistic about peace and very frightened.
Alan, how do you think the conflict is going to affect the relationship between Israel and the U.S.? Joe Biden is pro-Israel, but you have some Democrats who are not, and there are problems on the Republican side as well. What say you?
There are problems in both political parties. In the Democratic Party, there is a very leftward fringe who are very anti-Israel, composed of people like AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley, Ilhan Omar. And in the Republican Party, you have people who claim to be pro-Israel, but they're white supremacists. So the Jewish community in this country does have problems. And it is a very difficult future I see ahead. The main thing that the Jewish community has to do is have good relationships with whoever is the president, the candidate for either party. And if they can get that, they will survive and prevail. But that's the biggest problem.
Alan, what do you see as the role of the U.S. in resolving this conflict? Joe Biden has come out. We know that he's pro-Israel, but there are those on the Democratic side who are not. And there are issues on the Republican side as well. So what say you?
It's very important that President Biden continue to support Israel very strongly. It is very important that AIPAC, which is the lobbying arm of the American-Israel Alliance, maintain the pressures on both political parties, act in a bipartisan way. I'm concerned about both parties. The Democratic Party has an extremist fringe of very left-wing members of the House, people like AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Pressley, and others such as Rashida Tlaib. The Republicans have people who claim to be pro-Israel, but they're also white nationalists who are anti-Semitic. So it's a very difficult tightrope for Israel to walk. And I just hope and pray that all goes well.
Can you talk a little bit about New Jersey's relationship with Israel? There used to be a time, and there still might be, if you were running for governor, you went to Israel. Senator Cory Booker was in Israel when the attacks happened. He got back to New Jersey safely. But can you just explain that for the viewers who may be saying, well, I'm not Jewish, I live in New Jersey, what does this have to do with me?
I'll tell you who explained it best was Tom Kean. I was in Israel with him once, and I asked him how he prioritized travel in his first term. He said New Jersey basically had three ethnic nations, Israel, Ireland, and Italy. And he made sure he went to all three, because it's very important, given the Jewish population here, given the concerns Jews have about Israel, their brothers and sisters in Israel, that a governor recognized that he realizes the kinship we have, or she realizes the kinship we have. In the case of Christy Whitman, whom I worked under, she went to Israel a number of times. And so it's important to recognize that, and governors of both parties have. That's been a good thing for the Jewish community of New Jersey.
Alan, just final thoughts on how you feel that this is affecting the Jewish community in New Jersey.
Anxiety. In one word, anxiety. People tend to send their children to school in Israel. For example, my son went to Hebrew University as part of the study abroad program when he was an undergraduate at the University of Maryland. People vacation in Israel, people have children who've lived in Israel, and there's a great deal of concern for security, more than I've seen in a long time.
All right. Alan Steinberg, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Delighted, and we all pray for Israel. And Laura, I appreciate your support in airing these matters.
Always. Alan, thank you so much. State Senator John Bramnick is a Republican representing the 21st Legislative District, which includes parts of Morris, Somerset, and Union counties. Senator Bramnick has held leadership positions in both the Assembly and Senate. He served as the Assembly Republican leader from 2012 to 2021. In the Senate, he has been the minority leader since 2022. In addition to his political career, he's also known as the funniest lawyer in New Jersey. Senator John Bramnick, welcome to the show.
Love being on your show, Laura.
Funny, ha ha, not funny like a clown.
Well, sometimes, both ways, unfortunately.
But what isn't a laughing matter, though, is how serious you are about responding to the people you represent. You make it a point to personally return emails and even a cell phone call within seconds. Can you tell me a little bit about that devotion to your constituents?
Well, very simply, I think it's so disrespectful when you call someone, anyone, and they don't return your call. And even with the media, why shouldn't you answer every question? And with the public, they call a politician maybe once in their life. Return the call immediately. What is more important than returning a call to someone? You know, that's sometimes you can't do the big stuff in Trenton, but you can always do the little stuff.
Right. And it does make a difference because people are sometimes they're just frustrated and they just want to be heard.
You know, that's so true. People sometimes want to vent, so I won't interrupt them. I'll let them, and then even when they're mad, because they don't always agree with me, and so consequently they'll scream and yell, I'll let them talk. And then if you let them vent, they will back off. Well, thank you for returning my call. But if you start pushing back and arguing with people before they finish venting, it is a big mistake, big mistake.
Right. Well, let me ask you, right now, all 120 seats in the legislature are up, but overshadowing all of that, Bob Menendez. And I want to talk, even though that's in Washington, D.C., is that impacting the political vibe in Trenton? And, and how could it impact the political landscape in Trenton?
Well, it's unfortunate because we've always had a reputation as a state that had unethical politicians. Now, he's not guilty until proven guilty. But if you remember when Chris Christie was he was the U.S. attorney, he indicted and convicted over 100 politicians. So this, regardless of whether the allegations are true or not, it's not helpful for the image of New Jersey. So it's really an unfortunate situation.
Well, let me also ask you about some of the drama going on in D.C. over the speaker. It's not just Democrats who have got a bit of a black eye with this corruption scandal for Bob Menendez, but what of it, of the drama in D.C.? Is that impacting you all here in New Jersey and the upcoming elections? Are you hearing about it when you're out on the campaign trail?
Well, let me first say that the Menendez situation does affect Democrats because they're Democrats. And this situation in the Congress is a disgrace. A few people who didn't want to vote for Speaker McCarthy has made it look like the Republicans can't govern. It is a total disgrace. Sometimes you're not going to agree with everything the majority of your party thinks about. Doesn't mean you're going to hold up the government and change the speaker because 4 or 5 or 6 people don't like him or disagree with him. It is a very bad thing for the Republican Party. And I hope all the Congress people who voted for McCarthy will stand up and point to these few people, I call them extremists, who in my judgment are screwing up the image of the Republican Party.
And part of what you do outside of, commenting on what's happening in D.C., you make it a point to reach across the aisle as a Republican, reach across, and you make this a hallmark, really, when you're out, when you're talking about trying to silence those extreme ends and focus more on what we agree upon. So can you talk a little bit about how you navigate that and how difficult it is, or maybe it isn't? Is media blowing things up more so?
So I don't meet a lot of extremists out when I'm campaigning. Most people want to see us working together. Most people are in the middle. 75% of people in New Jersey are in the middle of the political spectrum. You don't hear from them. You just hear from the wingnuts on both sides. And that's because it makes good news. I used to go on cable TV, MSNBC, Fox, CNN. They won't put me on anymore because I'm not controversial. I try to answer the question. Historically, whether it was Reagan and Tip O'Neill or prior presidents in the Democratic leadership, you can still speak to with each other. I was with Phil Murphy, and some extremists saw it. How dare you get together with Phil Murphy? They must have forgotten he's the governor. He's a friend of mine. We may not agree on everything, agree with maybe a very little. He and Tammy are friends of mine. Is that wrong? And if it's wrong, to be honest with you, I'm willing to stand on my record as speaking to the other side of the aisle and being a reasonable person. And how about, would you get along with everyone in your family if they had to agree with you, or in your business? It is absurd what's going on in today's politics.
Yeah. Well, can you talk a little bit about, once you get past some of the rhetoric that's out there, what do you see as the issues that are really most important to New Jersey? Because when you talk about the upcoming legislative elections, people will say, well, the Democrats are going to run on abortion, the Republicans are going to run on parental rights and the parental rights in schools. Are those really the issues that are most important right now?
Well, when you need one line, maybe, but let's drill down to the real issue. Crime is really a serious situation in this state. We've seen it in all the suburbs. And with respect to parental rights, I don't care who you talk to. First and second grade children, kindergarten children should not be taught gender identity, right? On the abortion issue, though it's a federal issue, I happen to be a pro-choice Republican. It is significant when government decides what a woman can do with her own body. So they are all issues, but there's also a trend. And the trend is that the Democrats have gone too far to the left. And that's why this year, the generic ballot, meaning the Republican versus Democratic polling, tends to be moving towards the Republicans, because unfortunately, the Democrats have moved towards their extreme left. And that, I think, is going to significantly affect the outcome of elections. But there's no question that taxes is always an issue. Crime is clearly how decisions made in a school as to whether to alert the parents as to an issue. And abortion is an issue, though it's a federal issue, and it's never going to be banned in New Jersey. Bottom line is, it's still an issue in elections, no question about it.
You say it'll never be banned in New Jersey, but how can you? People thought Roe versus Wade would never be overturned. How can you be so sure? Especially New Jersey. I mean, this is New Jersey. We surprise people for a living.
Well, here's what I think. Well, first of all, New Jersey, I don't think will ever change it. I mean, I would bet a lot of money on that. But let's assume at the federal level you had a ban abortion across the country. I think it'd be a constitutional crisis. I don't think states like California, New York, or New Jersey would respect the law. And give you an example, marijuana. Okay, marijuana is still a federal offense, but you don't see the feds coming in and trying to enforce the marijuana laws at the federal level and the state level. It is such a controversial area. That's why I'm saying that I think it would be a constitutional crisis. And if abortions were banned federally for all states, I think some of these states wouldn't comply, and to be honest with you, I don't think the feds would come in and enforce it. That's my guess.
Okay. Well, I want to ask you about a new political action committee that you have formed. It's called Balance for New Jersey. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what it's all about?
Yeah, I am moving forward with this PAC, which is to help candidates and people who think that extremists in New Jersey are not helpful for us as Republicans to win. So consequently, I'm raising money, and I'm going to begin doing that actually in the next couple of weeks. And I'm going to support people, in my judgment, who are in the middle, who are Republicans and respect the system, who don't believe January 6th was just a simple protest. People who believe that you speak to other politicians and other people with respect. So I'm going to fight like hell to find people in the middle through my new PAC, which is Balance for New Jersey. And I am as serious as the extremists are on raising money and bringing this message to the state.
Well, what about further aspirations? Are you planning to run for governor? I know this is a legislative year, but your name comes up sometimes.
Well, certainly after November, and if I'm fortunate enough to get a 4-year term, you're going to hear my voice loud and clear. Wherever that voice is going to be, whether it's running for governor or just taking that message around the state, let me tell you something. I am going to be a nightmare for extremists in this state. I'm going to continue to be their worst possible nightmare because I think it's a disgrace. I think it hurts our democracy. And I think the future of America has to be where we balance, we talk to each other, and we respect each other. And I'm going to fight. And if that means running for governor, that's a possibility. It means going around the state and just being a voice. But I am sick and tired of extremists getting all of the attention. And most of the people in this country, in our state, are people of goodwill, willing to listen to the other side, and willing to compromise. And that's the future of democracy.
I mean, it sounds kind of like you've made up your mind, but respect that you're going to wait till after November. So you mentioned that you're friends with Governor Murphy. You don't agree on a lot. How do you think he's doing? And also, he's got a lot on his plate. He had to appoint a new lieutenant governor, Tahesha Way, and who knows what's going to happen with Bob Menendez if he were to step down. He's got a lot going on. How do you think he's doing?
Well, Sheila Oliver, actually, you mentioned of the loss of Sheila Oliver. I was minority leader. She was the speaker. And I have to tell you, we were good friends. Very, very big heart, very committed. Getting back to Phil Murphy, as I said, personally, like spending time with him. But I think he's moved, the state to the left and putting Democrats in vulnerable positions when they have to run for re-election. For example, a police officer reports a 12-year-old smoking marijuana and drinking beer. If that police officer tells the parents, the police officer is a criminal. So as you can see, those kind of laws are taking the Democratic Party farther and farther to the left. I think he's, as I said, nice man, friendly with Tammy as well. But the bottom line is, I think you have to be more of a moderate in this state. And it's just the way the state is. It's a moderate state. You got to be a moderate.
All right, John Bramnick, right after the election, I'm going to be calling you on the phone and asking you about your run for governor. You got to come. You got to come tell us. Got to give it to us first.
I'm picking it up really quickly, but I can tell you, I'll be fighting for the reasonable people in this state, and I'm going to fight like hell.
John Bramnick, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. Good to see you.
We lost lives. Employees literally left the job on time after time. We didn't take repeated, obvious steps in terms of PPE. We didn't provide the type of cares that our veterans deserve. And as a result of that, we're in a position today where we've got significant changes proposed, agreement on those changes and how we implement them. So I think for the folks that are hearing us today, and especially if they have a veteran in the care of the state of New Jersey, what they should understand is today that care is focused and and certainly better than it's been. But there are even more improvements on the way with the suggestions that we're proposing. And Laura, if I can, I'm sorry. There are 3 veterans homes in New Jersey. You mentioned Menlo and Paramus, which are the focus of the Department of Justice report and the SCI report. But to be clear, and just to make sure that folks are clear, those in South Jersey, in particular the Vineland facility, because of the layout, the construction, for a variety of different reasons, really aren't a focus of what we're doing here, although they'll be part of the overall solution.
Of all of the 4 years in our election cycle, this is going to be the year with the lowest turnout. When the legislature is at the top of the ticket, you don't have a draw like president or like governor. And so we could be looking at something under 30% turnout, which is kind of crazy to think about. But so far, the number of votes by mail that have been received is hanging in there. We've got about what we had at this time during the governor's race. So that's good news. It either means that there's more interest this year or there's just more adopters into that vote by mail program. So we're hoping that the bottom doesn't fall out in terms of voter participation this year.
Yeah, well,
Democrats want you to focus on abortion rights. They know that that's an issue that is playing very well for them nationally, that Republicans, they view as wanting to take the rights of women to have self-determination away. And so they are trying to motivate their voters to vote on the basis of that issue. For Republicans, they're hoping to get voters out to the polls with that low turnout based on issues around parental notification in schools and parental involvement in schools. They are also talking about the steep price, maybe too high of a price for renewable energy. They're hoping to motivate people on those kinds of issues this year. And we'll see who does a better job of turning out their base. That's the name of the game this year in a low turnout election, is who can motivate more of their voters to come out.
and that will do it for today. Thank you so much for watching New Jersey Politics. I am Laura Jones. We look forward to seeing you back here next time.